Scott, the term for today is planning.
Yeah, excellent. There's a term. Is there a question, or do you just want me to start talking?
Start talking about how planning relates to the good place and utopian principles.
Yeah, so one of the key, I guess I'd say, requirements for planning is that if you're working in an organization, by definition, you're working with multiple different people. And in order to coordinate what everyone's doing, you need to have a plan that everyone understands and is bought into. So when we talk about training later, we'll talk about how you need to have written work procedures so everyone agrees on how you do things. But when you look at what you plan to do over time, use the word plan right in there, that's planning. So in order to facilitate multiple people working together for a common purpose, you need to have a plan that applies to the whole group. And as we said with leadership, there are people whose role is to coordinate the work of others versus doing that work. So we were just talking about plumbing. So at a plumbing company, there's plumbers who go out and do the work in your home to repair your plumbing or to install something new. But back at the office, at the building that they came from, there's people who take the calls and schedule when the plumbers go where. There's people who make sure that the stock room has all the different parts that they need and reorders parts before they run out of them. In that mix of the people who actually do the work can't do all the work that supports them, the bigger the organization gets, the more people you can have who support the frontline work that people do that creates value through your products and services. Planning is one of those functions. Planning needs to be directed by the charter. The charter tells the organization who they are, why they exist, what their values are, and what their aims are. So planning needs to continuously refer back to the charter. There's any number of different ways that you can plan. If you go to the business section of any bookstore, go online and ask for business planning. In a search, you'll just get zillions of titles. The 10 areas that we've mentioned really are components, and I think the main components for the planning. A charter needs to be formulated, communicated, understood, and engaged. So where are you at on that journey? The day after you have the big group meeting and all the sticky notes and you come up with, here's our charter, or however you come up with your charter, you have not achieved all of those levels of what a charter needs to do for the organization. So planning needs to include, what's your plan on communicating your charter? Do you need to revisit how it's applied? So there will be planning around charter. There'll be planning around managing systems. There'll be planning around training. There'll be planning around internal and external communication. So every one of the 10 areas, you need to plan for how you're going to execute in that area, including a little bit self-referential, but there needs to be a plan for how to do planning. The organization over time will learn through experience, through outside input too, but through their experience, this is an effective way for us to plan. And every year there should be conversations on, are there ways to improve our planning?
So planning, in order to distinguish it from charter and from system, which I was thinking about when I was listening to you, system seems to be something that's set in place, that's just based to the essence of the company itself and how it internally runs. But planning is much more of a contingency thing where you sit and say how if we're going to meet this situation, if we have a business that has only 5 employees, how do we communicate? How do we supply this? How do we train? how do we plan for 5 employees? But if we grow and we have 50 employees, then things have to change as to how we do that, and how do we plan for that? Is that am I thinking along the right lines there?
Great question. You asked a question where I had made an assumption. I guess the two main sources that necessitate planning, one is if you plan to grow, how do you plan to do that? And the other one is our environment changes. As our environment changes, that change could be a threat to something that we're doing, or a challenge to something we're doing, and how will we address that? As well as changes could also present opportunities. The same change that is a threat to something you're doing, seen the right way, is an opportunity for doing something new, different, and better. So if you're not planning to grow, and if you live in a totally stable environment, maybe you don't need to plan.
Now, is planning something that just sort of arises organically within the human units that are already in place, or would an organization say, well, we need a department of planning, or we need a czar of planning, or manager of planning, or whatever? What's the approach here?
Well, part of the beauty of these 10 areas is they give you lots of room for innovation and for thinking up something that you own, that's your idea, versus just giving you, here's the recipe on how to make these brownies. This is how you do it. One of the components that needs to be, I feel, in every planning process derives from our understanding that work is a means of grace. It's a tool that God uses in people's lives to build us up into fully what God has for us. A big component of that is each of us is created with creative ability, creative thinking. And the workplace needs to call on that in us, to exercise that in us for our growth, which is the purpose of work. The purpose of work is to give people opportunity and encouragement to grow. And if you just have 5 people make the plan, then tell everybody else, here's what you're going to do, you have starved off an avenue for somebody to grow through exercising their creative capacity. So if it's only 5 people, they're all just in it in one little group doing a plan maybe. If you have a larger organization, you got a sales group, you got a production group, you've got 2 or 3 different internal support service groups. So the overall organization has a direction they're going. Each one of those different groups has a way that they're going to support that overall direction. So the way I would organize it, which isn't the only way, might not even be the best way, is some group that includes representation from all parts of the organization works on the vision, the larger vision, and then each of the smaller groups says, here's how we are going to do what we need to do to support that. Mm-hmm. And that includes, in those smaller groups, participation from everybody in their group. So everyone has a stake in that.
Thank you, Scott.